Welcome back, listeners. We're diving deep today into personal accounts of angel encounters.
Oh, fascinating.
We've got a really interesting mix of sources for this one.
Okay.
Online stories, some theological discussions, and even Gary Busey.
Always an interesting perspective.
He claims to have seen angels during a near-death experience.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Should be interesting to see how those different perspectives all kind of come together. But first,
Yeah.
I think the question that always comes up is like, what do angels actually look like?
Right, right.
We've all seen those classic images, halos, wings,
Yeah.
the whole deal. But some of these stories paint a very different picture.
Interesting.
For example, there's this one from the St. Michael Center website.
Okay.
This woman, she's with her mother, and their car breaks down on this like deserted bike trail.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And this guy just appears out of nowhere, fixes their tire like incredibly fast, and then says, that's number 68 for me today, and just vanishes.
Like a true drop-in angel.
Mm-hmm.
Blending in, not wanting to draw attention. It's like a recurring theme in these stories.
Well, makes you wonder why, though.
Right.
Why wouldn't they want to, I don't know, make a bigger deal out of it?
Right.
But then on the other hand, you've got someone like Gary Busey, right?
Yeah.
He describes angels, after his motorcycle accident, as balls of light.
So different.
Totally different.
Yeah.
So how do you reconcile that?
It's a good question.
The helpful stranger
Right.
versus the balls of light.
Well, like, how do you even begin to make sense of that?
I know. And it's not just those two. Like, there are all sorts of different descriptions out there.
Well, that's what's so interesting about this topic.
Yeah.
If you look at some of the theological discussions, like Angelology explained, for instance,
Yeah.
they really emphasize that angels are spirit beings.
Right.
They're not bound by physical form.
So, like, they can appear however they want, basically.
Exactly. It's about their purpose, their mission.
Yeah.
They adapt to fit the situation.
Okay. That makes sense. So maybe the human form is best for, just blending in, doing those everyday good deeds.
Right.
But the balls of light, maybe that's more for, like, a spiritual realm, like the one that Gary Busey described experiencing.
And sometimes they might even choose to remain completely hidden, working behind the scenes.
Whoa, so we could be interacting with angels all the time and not even know it.
Exactly. Like Hebrews 13.2 even reminds us to be hospitable to strangers, because some of them, well, they might be angels without us realizing it.
Wow. That's a lot to take in.
It is.
So, okay, angels can look like basically anything, but what are they actually doing here?
Right.
What's their purpose?
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's where things get even more fascinating. Let's consider this story from the St. Michael Center.
Okay.
This person has a dream,
Right.
right? And they hear a voice, and the voice says, go and pray. And soon after that dream, the person's mother-in-law passes away.
Wow. So it's like a warning.
A premonition, maybe?
Yeah, it's giving me like Jacob's Ladder vibes.
Oh, totally. Those classic biblical stories of angels appearing in dreams.
Yeah, like, is there something about dreams that makes us more open to that?
Possibly. Some sources, like angels appearing in dreams, suggest that our rational mind is kind of less active when we're dreaming.
Makes sense.
So we might be more receptive to, spiritual communication in that state.
Yeah.
Like our defenses are down.
So it's like the veil between worlds is thinner.
Maybe. It's definitely a fascinating idea.
But this story also touches on another big theme: protection. There are so many accounts of people who believe angels intervene to protect them from harm.
Oh, absolutely. Like there's this one angel rescue on the highway. The driver felt something take control of their car as it spun out of control.
Yeah, it's like an invisible force preventing a major accident.
Exactly.
And then there's that one where the 16-year-old girl was thrown from her car during a crash and felt herself being, like, caught and carried to safety.
Guardian angel Nana carries the day.
Right. And the angel even resembled her deceased grandmother.
It's a powerful image, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Really tugs at the heartstrings.
But it also raises a difficult question.
Oh.
If angels are protecting some, why not everyone? Do we all have a guardian angel? And if so, how do we make sense of the tragedies that still happen?
Yeah, that's the age-old question, isn't it?
It is.
Why do bad things happen to good people? Why is there suffering in the world?
It's a tough one. Angelology explained reminds us that even in the Bible, individuals known for their faith still suffered. Angelic protection, it seems, is not a guarantee.
So maybe it's more about, like, a bigger picture, a divine plan that we don't always understand.
It could be. And perhaps it's also about acknowledging that even in the midst of suffering, There can be moments of grace, of intervention, that remind us we're not alone.
Okay, that's pretty deep.
Yeah.
Let's lighten things up a bit. What about the whole gender thing?
Oh, interesting. What about it?
Well, do angels even have genders?
That's a good question.
I mean, most of the depictions we see are masculine, right?
Right. Like the guy changing the tire, the man in the dream saying, go and pray.
Exactly.
There's definitely a strong masculine association.
Yeah.
But then you have stories like the one from St. Michael Center about the woman who encountered an angel making a quilt.
Okay.
And she very clearly perceived this angel as female. A lady, she said.
So are angels shapeshifters?
Maybe. Or perhaps it goes back to the idea of them being spirit beings.
Right.
They're not bound by physical limitations like gender.
So maybe they just appear in whatever form is most helpful, most comforting for the person they're interacting with.
Exactly. It's about adapting to their mission, transcending human concepts like gender.
Yeah.
Almost like they're mirroring back to us our own perceptions and expectations.
Whoa, okay, that's trippy. So we've talked about appearances and their purpose.
Right.
But what about actually sensing an angelic presence?
Oh, good question.
Is it always a visual thing?
It seems not. You know, some encounters involve more than just sight.
Like, what?
Yeah.
What else?
Well, there's this fascinating story from Personal Stories where someone felt a warm touch on their back while sleeping and interpreted it as an angelic sign.
Ooh, that's a bit spooky.
I know. But there are other accounts, too, where people felt physical sensations they attributed to angels.
So, like, are there any sources that actually back this up?
Actually, yeah. Angelology Explained and several other anecdotal accounts suggest that angels might communicate in ways that go beyond visuals.
You mean like through feelings, emotions, that kind of thing?
Exactly. Maybe even a deep sense of knowing, like a sudden intuition.
So are we talking about those gut feelings that we often just ignore?
Maybe. There are lots of stories where people report feeling this inexplicable knowing and attribute it to angelic influence.
Like that one, you don't want to go down there, where the man felt strongly compelled not to go down a particular street in New Orleans.
Right. And later he was convinced it was his guardian angel intervening.
It's like a sixth sense almost, an inner voice guiding us.
It could be. It really makes you wonder how much of our intuition could actually be attributed to angelic influence.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
We've got angels appearing as strangers, as balls of light, offering protection, appearing in dreams.
It's a pretty wide spectrum, isn't it?
It is. It seems like there's no one-size-fits-all when it comes to angelic encounters.
Exactly. And I think that speaks to the enduring mystery of angels. We can try to categorize them, understand them, but there's always something more to discover.
It's like the more we learn, the more questions we have.
Absolutely. And that's what keeps this topic so fascinating.
Before we wrap up this part, I want to circle back to Gary Busey for a minute.
Okay.
He offered a pretty interesting interpretation of his experience.
Oh, I bet he did.
So remember he told Howie Mandel that the angels represented truth to him.
Right.
And then he even spelled it out, Truth. And he said it stood for taking real understanding to heart.
That's very Gary Busey.
Very Gary Busey. But, you know, his interpretation, it does make you think, what's the ultimate meaning behind these encounters?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah. What are angels trying to tell us?
It's a question that everyone has to answer for themselves, ultimately.
Yeah.
But what we can say for sure is that while the Bible provides some information about angels, much about their nature and how they interact with us remains a mystery.
So we're left to ponder the possibilities, search for meaning in our own experiences, and stay open to the unexpected.
Precisely. Maybe that's part of the beauty of this topic. It invites us to explore the unknown, to question our assumptions, to embrace the idea that there might be more to reality than meets the eye.
A lot to think about for sure.
There is. It's amazing how these stories, even the ones about, protection, they kind of hint at a deeper purpose, like some sort of divine intervention in our lives.
Oh, yeah, totally. Like in those stories where people felt this like unseen hand guiding them away from danger.
Exactly. Like someone or something is looking out for them, intervening at just the right moment.
Right. And if we like connect this to a bigger like theological framework,
right,
it kind of aligns with the idea of angels as like agents of divine will.
Exactly. Carrying out a higher purpose that we might not always understand.
So it makes you wonder, is there a bigger plan at play, even in those like seemingly random events.
It's a fascinating thought, isn't it?
But the thing that keeps coming back to me is this idea of angelic protection being so selective.
Oh, right. We touched on this earlier.
Yeah, but like if angels are intervening to protect some people, why not everyone?
It's a profound question, and it's one that theologians have been grappling with for centuries.
Yeah.
The source Angelology explained touches on this concept of free will.
Okay.
Even within a belief system that includes divine intervention, there's this recognition that humans have the capacity to make their own choices.
Okay.
And those choices have consequences.
So maybe it's not about like angels choosing who to protect and who to, leave vulnerable.
Right.
But more about respecting our free will, allowing us to navigate the challenges of life, even the painful ones on our own terms.
That's one possible interpretation. And it definitely raises a lot of questions about, the whole free will versus divine intervention debate.
Right. It's like, where do you draw the line?
Exactly. It's a complex theological discussion. And honestly, we could probably spend a whole other deep dive unpacking it.
Maybe we should. But I think for now, it's important to acknowledge the sheer diversity of angelic encounters that we're seeing in these sources.
Oh, absolutely.
We've got these dramatic rescues, but then there are also these quieter, more subtle interactions.
Right. It seems that angelic communication can be incredibly personalized.
Yeah.
Like almost like a secret language between the individual and the divine.
Oh, I like that.
For example, there's this woman who found a silver ring with an Irish coin in it.
Oh, yeah. Clear sign from personal stories.
Exactly. And she interpreted that as a sign to move to Spain.
I loved that one. It felt so, I don't know, serendipitous.
Right.
Like almost fated. It makes you wonder if angels can use these like symbolic objects or events to kind of nudge us in a certain direction.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah.
It suggests they might communicate through this language of synchronicity, using these meaningful coincidences to kind of guide us toward a particular path.
It's like Carl Jung's idea of meaningful coincidences.
Exactly. Those moments where, seemingly unrelated events converge in a way that feels significant.
But like the universe is like winking at you, trying to get your attention.
Yeah, I love that. Like a cosmic treasure hunt.
Yeah. And we have to like decipher the clues.
Exactly.
But we've also seen how these communications can go beyond, just visual signs.
Oh, right.
Like we have those stories where people report like feeling a presence, a touch, or even an emotion.
Right. And those accounts really highlight the multisensory nature of angelic encounters.
Yeah.
It's not just about seeing or hearing, it's about feeling it, know, like on a deeper, more intuitive level.
It's like that story being touched on back from personal stories where someone felt this warm touch on their back while they were sleeping.
Right.
I get chills just thinking about it.
I know, it's powerful stuff. And it aligns with several other accounts where people describe feeling a comforting presence, often during times of grief or loss.
Yeah.
It's as if, the angels are offering this tangible expression of comfort and support.
So are they like interacting with our energy fields or something?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
It certainly challenges our conventional understanding of reality.
Yeah. Makes you wonder about the nature of energy and consciousness and how it all connects.
Right. And that leads us to, a question that's intrigued people for centuries. Can we actively seek out angelic guidance?
Oh, interesting.
Like, is it something we can, cultivate? Or is it purely a matter of grace?
Well, I mean, there are practices like, praying to angels or meditating with the intention of connecting with them.
Right.
But like, do those actually work?
Our sources don't really offer a definitive answer on that.
Okay.
But they do point to the importance of creating space for these encounters to occur.
Okay, so like making ourselves more receptive.
Exactly. Cultivating a sense of openness, receptivity, and even gratitude. Maybe that makes us more attuned to these subtle energies.
So maybe it's not about like controlling the interaction, but more about becoming more aware of the possibilities, more attuned to the whispers of the universe.
Precisely. And maybe it's about recognizing that angelic guidance might not always come in the form we expect.
Right.
It could be a sudden insight, a chance encounter, or even a dream that leaves a lasting impression.
So basically learn to trust our intuition.
Exactly. Those moments where we sense something is right or wrong, even if we can't logically explain it.
Yeah, like those gut feelings that we often just dismiss.
Right.
What if those are actually trying to tell us something important?
It's a fascinating possibility, isn't it?
It is. But I think it's important to acknowledge, despite all these stories, all these attempts to understand and categorize, there's still so much we just don't know about angels.
Absolutely. The mystery endures.
Yeah, it's like we're trying to define something that's inherently undefinable.
Right. And that's part of what makes this topic so compelling.
It is.
It forces us to confront the limits of our understanding, to embrace the unknown, and to acknowledge that there might be, realms of existence beyond our current comprehension.
Right. It's like we're constantly bumping up against the edges of our own knowledge, trying to make sense of something that's inherently beyond our grasp.
Exactly. And in a world that often prioritizes logic and reason, I think there's something profoundly liberating about embracing the mystery, about acknowledging that we don't have all the answers.
It allows us to step outside of our comfort zones, question our assumptions, be open to new possibilities.
I love that. It's a great way to put it.
So with all these diverse accounts, how do we even begin to make sense of them?
Right.
What are they trying to tell us?
That's where things get really interesting.
Okay, I'm all ears.
If we look at, the recurring themes in these accounts, several distinct purposes seem to emerge.
Okay, so let's dive into the why behind these angelic encounters.
One of the most prominent themes, as we've already discussed, is protection.
Right.
We've seen how individuals believe, angels intervene to shield them from harm, sometimes in really dramatic ways.
Those stories are hard to ignore.
They are.
Like angel rescue on the highway, or guardian angel Nana carries the day. They really highlight that belief in those unseen protectors watching over us.
Absolutely.
But these accounts aren't limited to those dramatic life or death situations, are they?
No, not at all.
We've also seen examples where angels seemingly prevented smaller scale misfortunes, those near misses that could have easily turned into something worse.
Right. Remember the story, Get Off the Highway Now?
Oh, yeah. Where the driver felt this overwhelming urge to exit the freeway.
Right.
And then later discovered their water pump had completely broken down.
Exactly.
If they had stayed on the road, who knows what could have happened.
That could have been a very different outcome.
But those subtle nudges, how do we know if it's really angelic intervention or just, I don't know, a lucky break?
That's a tough one.
Is there a way to distinguish between the two?
I think it comes down to trusting our intuition, that inner knowing that often speaks to us in whispers.
Okay.
We might not always have a logical explanation for those feelings, but sometimes it's important to, pay attention to them.
So those gut feelings that we often ignore.
Exactly.
Maybe they're trying to tell us something important.
They could be.
But this idea of angelic protection, it brings up another question.
Okay.
If angels are guiding some people away from harm, does that mean that everyone who experiences a tragedy, somehow lacked that guidance? Does it imply that they were, I don't know, less deserving of protection?
That's a complex and sensitive question.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to, approach it with compassion and humility.
Yeah.
As we discussed earlier, the concept of free will is a crucial element in many theological frameworks.
Right.
And it suggests that humans have the capacity to make choices, even choices that lead to suffering.
Okay.
Angelic protection, it might not be about preventing all harm,
Okay.
but rather about offering guidance and support within the framework of our own choices.
So it's not about angels deciding who to protect and who to, I don't know, abandon.
Right.
But more about respecting our free will, allowing us to learn and grow, even through difficult experiences.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's also important to remember that our understanding of the divine plan is limited.
Right.
We might not always grasp the reasons behind certain events.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean there isn't a deeper purpose at play.
Right. It's that whole trust the process kind of thing.
Exactly.
But alongside this idea of protection, we've also seen how angels might serve as guides.
Oh, yeah?
Leading us toward a particular path or decision. It's like they're showing us the way, even if we're not always aware of their presence.
It's a beautiful thought. Like a gentle nudge in the right direction.
Yeah. Remember that story, Go and Pray, where the person felt this strong urge to pray shortly before their mother-in-law passed away.
Right.
And then there was that other story about the man who felt a strong intuition warning him not to go down a certain street in New Orleans.
Exactly. It's like they're whispering in our ear, trying to steer us in the right direction.
But how do we know if it's really angelic guidance or just, our own subconscious thoughts?
That's a great question. It's about discernment,
Yeah.
It's about learning to distinguish between those thoughts that originate from our own minds
Okay.
and those that seem to come from a source outside of ourselves.
Right.
It's a process of cultivating self-awareness and learning to trust our intuition.
Okay.
Sometimes those intuitive flashes, those moments of clarity, they might be more than just our own thoughts.
So those moments of inspiration, those, aha moments, those could be angelic guidance.
They could be subtly influencing our decisions, directing us toward a path that aligns with our highest good.
It's a fascinating concept.
It is.
But it also raises a question.
Okay.
If angels are offering guidance, does that mean they're also capable of, delivering warnings?
Interesting.
Could they be trying to alert us to potential dangers or pitfalls?
That's a question that takes us deeper into this realm of angelic intervention.
Yeah.
And if we look at our sources, we see numerous accounts where people believe angels intervened to warn them of impending danger.
Like that story about the woman who felt her vertical blinds like moving rapidly back and forth, even though there was no wind or draft.
Exactly.
She interpreted it as like her guardian angel trying to warn her of something.
It's a powerful image.
It is. And there was another account where a family was alerted to a fire in their home by what they believed was an angel opening and closing a door.
Wow.
It's a bit unsettling, isn't it?
It is.
This idea that angels might be trying to warn us of things that we can't, see or predict.
It adds another layer of complexity to our understanding of these encounters.
It does. But are these warnings only about, physical dangers?
Right.
Or could they also be about, like, spiritual or emotional pitfalls? Could angels be guiding us away from, I don't know, negative influences or harmful choices?
That's a thought-provoking idea.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder if, angels are not just concerned with our physical well-being,
Yeah.
but also with our spiritual and emotional growth.
Maybe they're trying to steer us toward a path of greater alignment with our higher selves.
Right. Even if it requires facing, uncomfortable truths or
Yeah.
or making difficult decisions.
Okay, so we've got angels as protectors, as guides, as messengers of warning.
It's a lot to take in.
It is, but it still doesn't fully encompass the spectrum of their potential roles, does it?
Right.
What about those accounts where people describe, feeling a profound sense of comfort and support from angels?
Oh, absolutely.
Especially during times of grief or loss.
Right. We've touched on this briefly.
Yeah.
But it's definitely an aspect that deserves further exploration.
Okay.
It seems that, angels can also act as these sources of solace and reassurance, particularly when we feel most alone and vulnerable.
Like in that story where the woman felt this comforting presence after, losing her brother and son.
Right.
She described it as like this feeling of warm hands on her back.
It's a beautiful image.
It is, providing this sense of peace and reassurance.
Exactly. And those accounts, they suggest that angels aren't just concerned with protecting us from harm.
Right.
But also with offering comfort and guidance through the inevitable challenges of life.
Yeah. Like they're reminding us that even in the midst of darkness and despair, we're not alone.
Right.
That there are, forces beyond the physical realm that care for us and support us.
It's a powerful reminder, isn't it?
It is. So is this like divine love that they're offering?
That's a great question. That's a question that's puzzled philosophers and theologians for centuries.
Yeah.
But I think it speaks to a fundamental human need for connection.
Yeah.
For belonging. For knowing that we're not alone in this vast and often chaotic universe.
It's comforting to think that we might have this sort of spiritual backup system.
Right.
Even if we don't fully understand how it works.
Exactly.
But, despite all these stories, all these attempts to understand and categorize, there's still so much we don't know about angels.
Oh, absolutely. The mystery of angels endures.
It's like we're trying to define something that's inherently undefinable.
You're right. And I think that's part of what makes this topic so compelling.
It is.
It forces us to confront the limits of our understanding, to embrace the unknown and to acknowledge that there might be, realms of existence beyond our current comprehension.
Right, like we're constantly bumping up against the edges of our own knowledge, trying to make sense of something that's inherently beyond our grasp.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And, in a world that often prioritizes logic and reason, I think there's something profoundly liberating about embracing the mystery,
Yeah.
about acknowledging that we don't have all the answers.
It allows us to step outside of our comfort zones, question our assumptions, be open to new possibilities.
Exactly. And that's a really powerful thing.
It is. So, with all these diverse accounts, how do we even begin to make sense of them? Like, what are they trying to tell us?
That's where things get really interesting. If we look at the recurring themes in these accounts, several distinct purposes seem to emerge.
Okay, so let's dive into the why behind these angelic encounters.
One of the most prominent themes, as we've, already discussed, is protection.
Right.
We've seen how individuals believe, angels intervene to shield them from harm, sometimes in really dramatic ways.
Those stories are hard to ignore, like angel rescue on the highway or guardian angel Nana carries the day.
Exactly. They really highlight that, that belief in those unseen protectors watching over us.
Yeah, but these accounts aren't limited to those dramatic life or death situations, are they?
No, not at all. We've also seen examples where angels seemingly prevented, like, smaller scale misfortunes.
Yeah.
Those near misses that could have easily turned into something worse.
Right. Like, remember that story, Get Off the Highway Now, where the driver felt this overwhelming urge to exit the freeway.
Right.
And then later discovered their water pump had completely broken down.
Exactly.
If they had stayed on the road, who knows what could have happened.
It would have been a very different outcome.
Yeah. But those subtle nudges, how do we know if it's really angelic intervention or just, a lucky break? Is there a way to distinguish between the two?
I think it comes down to, trusting our intuition. That inner knowing that often speaks to us in whispers. We might not always have a logical explanation for those feelings.
Right.
But sometimes it's important to pay attention to them. They could be guiding us toward a safer path.
So those gut feelings that we often ignore.
Exactly.
Maybe they're trying to tell us something important.
It could be.
But this idea of angelic protection, it brings up another question.
Okay.
If angels are guiding some people away from harm, does that mean that everyone who experiences a tragedy,
right,
somehow lacked that guidance?
Right.
Does it imply that they were, I don't know, less deserving of protection?
That's a complex and sensitive question.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to approach it with compassion and humility.
Yeah.
As we discussed earlier, the concept of free will is a crucial element in many theological frameworks.
Right.
And it suggests that humans have the capacity to make choices, even choices that lead to suffering.
Okay.
Angelic protection might not be about preventing all harm, but rather, about offering guidance and support within the framework of our own choices.
Yeah. So it's not about, angels deciding who to protect and who to, abandon, but more about respecting our free will, allowing us to learn and grow even through difficult experiences. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's also important to remember that our understanding of the divine plan is limited.
Right.
We might not always grasp the reasons behind certain events, but that doesn't mean there isn't a deeper purpose at play.
Right. It's that whole trust the process kind of thing.
Exactly.
But alongside this idea of protection, we've also seen how angels might serve as guides.
Oh, yeah.
Leading us toward a particular path or decision.
Right.
Like they're showing us the way, even if we're not always aware of their presence.
It's a beautiful thought, like a gentle nudge in the right direction.
Yeah. Like, remember that story, Go and Pray, where the person felt this strong urge to pray shortly before their mother-in-law passed away.
Right.
And then there was that other story about the man who felt this strong intuition warning him not to go down a certain street in New Orleans.
Exactly. It's like they're whispering in our ear, trying to steer us in the right direction.
Yeah, but how do we know if it's really angelic guidance or just, our own subconscious thoughts?
That's a great question. It's about discernment. It's about learning to distinguish between those thoughts that originate from our own minds,
okay,
and those that seem to come from a source outside of ourselves.
Okay.
It's a process of cultivating self-awareness and learning to trust our intuition. sometimes those intuitive flashes, those moments of clarity, they might be more than just our own thoughts.
So those moments of inspiration, those aha moments, those could be angelic guidance.
It could be, subtly influencing our decisions, directing us toward a path that aligns with our highest good.
It's a fascinating concept.
It is.
But it also raises a question.
Okay.
If angels are offering guidance, does that mean they're also capable of delivering warnings?
Interesting.
Could they be trying to alert us to potential dangers or pitfalls?
That's a question that takes us deeper into the realm of angelic intervention.
Yeah.
And if we look at our sources, we see numerous accounts where people believe angels intervened to warn them of impending danger.
Like that story about the woman who felt her vertical blinds like moving rapidly back and forth.
Right.
Even though there was no wind or draft.
Exactly.
She interpreted it as like her guardian angel trying to warn her of something.
It's a powerful image.
It is. And there was another account where a family was alerted to a fire in their home by what they believed was an angel opening and closing a door.
Wow.
It's a bit unsettling, isn't it?
It is.
This idea that angels might be trying to warn us of things that we can't, see or predict.
It adds another layer of complexity to our understanding of these encounters.
It does. But are these warnings, are they only about, physical dangers?
Right.
Or could they also be about, spiritual or emotional pitfalls?
Right.
Could angels be guiding us away from, negative influences or harmful choices, even if we don't consciously recognize the threat?
That's a thought-provoking idea.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder if, angels are not just concerned with our physical well-being,
Right.
but also with our spiritual and emotional growth.
Maybe they're trying to steer us toward a path of greater alignment with our higher selves.
Exactly. Even if it requires facing, uncomfortable truths or making difficult decisions.
So we've got angels as protectors, as guides, as messengers of warning.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. But it still doesn't fully encompass the spectrum of their potential roles, does it?
Right. We've also got to consider those accounts where people describe feeling, a profound sense of comfort and support from angels. Right. Particularly during times of grief or loss.
Like in that story where the woman felt this comforting presence after losing her brother and son. She described it as this feeling of warm hands on her back.
It's a beautiful image.
It is.
Yeah.
Providing this sense of peace and reassurance.
Exactly. And, those accounts, they suggest that angels aren't just concerned with protecting us from harm.
Right.
But also with offering comfort and guidance through the inevitable challenges of life.
It's like they're reminding us that even in the midst of darkness and despair, we're not alone.
Right.
That there are forces beyond the physical realm that care for us and support us.
It's a powerful reminder, isn't it?
It is. So is this divine love that they're offering?
That's a great question. And it's a question that's puzzled philosophers and theologians for centuries.
Right.
But I think it speaks to this fundamental human need for connection, for belonging, for knowing that we're not alone in this vast and often chaotic universe.
It's comforting to think that we might have this sort of spiritual backup system, even if we don't fully understand how it works.
Exactly.
But despite all these stories, all these attempts to understand and categorize, there's still so much we just don't know about angels.
Oh, absolutely. The mystery of angels endures.
It's like we're trying to define something that's inherently undefinable.
You're right, and I think that's part of what makes this topic so compelling.
It is.
It forces us to confront the limits of our understanding, to embrace the unknown, and to acknowledge that there might be realms of existence beyond our current comprehension.
Right, like we're constantly bumping up against the edges of our own knowledge, trying to make sense of something that's inherently beyond our grasp.
Exactly, and in a world that often prioritizes logic and reason, I think there's something profoundly liberating about embracing the mystery, about acknowledging that we don't have all the answers.
Right. It allows us to step outside of our comfort zones, question our assumptions, be open to new possibilities.
Exactly. And that's a really powerful thing.
It is. So with all these diverse accounts, how do we even begin to make sense of them? Like what are they trying to tell us?
That's where things get really interesting. If we look at, the recurring themes in these accounts, several several distinct purposes seem to emerge.
Okay, so let's dive into the why behind these angelic encounters.
One of those prominent themes, as we've, already discussed, is protection. We've seen how individuals believe angels intervene to shield them from harm, sometimes in really dramatic ways.
Right, those stories are hard to ignore, like Angel Rescue on the Highway or Guardian Angel Nana carries the day.
Exactly. They really highlight that, that belief in those unseen protectors watching over us.
But these accounts aren't they're not limited to those like dramatic life or death situations, are they?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
We've also seen examples where angels seemingly prevented, smaller scale misfortunes, those near misses that could have easily turned into something
Yeah.
worse.
Like remember the story Get Off the Highway Now, where the driver felt this overwhelming urge to exit the freeway and
Right.
then later discovered their water pump had completely broken down.
Exactly.
Wow, it feels like we've really journeyed through like a labyrinth of experiences and interpretations, haven't we? From like those heartwarming stories of protection to those that really challenge like our very understanding of reality.
It certainly has been a fascinating journey.
Yes.
And as we kind of approach the end of our deep dive here,
Yeah.
I think it's worth reflecting on why these stories, continue to hold such power over us. Like, what is it about angels that just captivates our imagination and inspires belief, across cultures and throughout history?
That's a question that's really resonated with me throughout this whole exploration. We've delved into, specific accounts, theological interpretations,
Right.
but there's something deeper at play here, isn't there?
I think you're absolutely right. If we kind of connect this to the larger human experience, it seems to point to this fundamental longing for connection, for meaning, for a
Yeah.
sense of something greater than ourselves.
Right.
And in a world that often feels so unpredictable and chaotic, the idea of these benevolent beings watching over us,
Yeah.
it can offer a really profound sense of comfort and hope.
It's like a beacon of light in the darkness,
Yeah.
reminding us that we're not alone in this journey.
Exactly. But it's not just about seeking comfort either, is it?
Right.
These stories also tap into our fascination with the unknown, with the mysteries that lie beyond our ordinary perception.
Yeah. They invite us to consider the possibility of realms beyond our five senses, of
Mhm.
unseen forces shaping our lives in ways that we might not fully comprehend.
Exactly. And in a world that often prioritizes logic and reason, there's something, quite liberating about embracing the mystery,
Yeah.
about acknowledging that we don't have all the answers.
It's like staring up at a vast night sky filled with stars we can't even begin to count.
I love that image.
Yeah, it evokes this sense of wonder, of awe, of our own smallness in the grand scheme of things.
And that sense of awe, that
Yeah.
that willingness to acknowledge the mysteries of the universe, it can be a gateway to spiritual exploration.
Right.
It encourages us to question our assumptions, to expand our consciousness, and to be open to new possibilities.
It's like those moments when we catch a glimpse of something beyond our everyday reality, like
Right.
a breathtaking sunset, a profound act of kindness, a
Yeah.
synchronistic event that seems to defy coincidence.
Exactly. And speaking of, diverse perspectives, we've primarily focused on a Judeo-Christian understanding of angels.
Right.
But it's important to remember that the concept of angels transcends any specific religious tradition.
Oh, that's a great point.
Yeah.
Makes me think of the Islamic tradition, where angels play this crucial role in revelation, judgment, and the recording of human deeds.
Right.
And in many indigenous cultures, there are spirit beings that serve as guardians, messengers, and intermediaries between the human and spirit worlds.
It's fascinating how these beliefs, while differing in their specifics, converge on this idea of non-human entities that interact with humanity,
Right.
often serving as these bridges between the earthly and the divine.
It suggests that this belief in angels or something akin to angels, it might be tapping into a universal human experience. This recognition of forces beyond our control, a longing for guidance and protection,
Right.
a sense that we're part of something larger than ourselves.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there. And that brings us to the question of personal interpretation.
Right.
How do we make sense of these stories, both ancient and modern? Are we meant to take them literally, or are they, metaphors for deeper truths?
That's a question that's sparked countless debates and interpretations. What do our sources have to say about this?
Well, if we look at, the biblical accounts, we see a range of depictions.
Yeah.
Sometimes, angels are portrayed as human-like figures, other times as these awe-inspiring celestial beings.
Yeah.
And their roles vary widely from messengers and warriors to protectors and guides.
Right.
It's a complex and multifaceted tapestry.
It's almost as if the Bible itself is acknowledging the mystery of angels,
All right.
presenting them in ways that defy easy categorization.
I think that's a really good point. And this diversity of depiction, it allows for a spectrum of interpretation.
Right.
Some might, view these accounts as literal descriptions of actual events,
Yeah.
while others might see them as symbolic representations of spiritual truths.
It's a reminder that our understanding of these stories is shaped by, our own cultural lenses, our personal beliefs, and even our individual experiences.
Precisely. And that brings us to, the importance of respecting those diverse perspectives.
Yeah.
While we might, not always agree with someone else's interpretation, I think it's crucial to approach these discussions with an open mind and a willingness to learn from different viewpoints.
Absolutely. Because whether we, embrace a literal or a metaphorical understanding, these stories offer, valuable insights into the human condition, our longing for connection, our search for meaning, our capacity for both wonder and skepticism.
Exactly. And as we conclude this deep dive, I think it's worth leaving our listener with a final thought-provoking question.
Okay, I like it.
If we approach these accounts with, an open mind and a discerning heart,
Yeah.
what can we learn about ourselves, about our world, and about the mysteries that lie beyond our ordinary perception?
That's a beautiful question to ponder, and one that might lead to some fascinating personal discoveries.
I think so too.
We encourage you to reflect on your own beliefs, your own experiences,
Right.
to remain curious about the unseen forces that might be shaping our lives in ways we can't fully comprehend. Until next time, keep exploring.
Absolutely.